Chemically speaking, all life is based on carbon. This element of matter moves through ecosystems in what is called the carbon cycle. The carbon cycle starts with air, because air contains carbon dioxide gas, a chemical compound made from one atom of carbon and two of oxygen. Land plants absorb carbon dioxide into their leaves and make sugar and other carbohydrates that can chemically store the sun's energy. Carbon dioxide also diffuses into water, where it is used by aquatic food producers such as seaweed. When organisms feed, they obtain both the chemical energy stored in carbohydrates and the carbon atoms the carbohydrates contain. Some carbon atoms are used to build body tissue, and others are released back into the environment as carbon dioxide when living things use chemically stored energy. Carbon is also returned to the environment when wood or fossil fuels are burned, and when decomposers carry out the process of decay. The carbon cycle clearly illustrates how the materials of life, in this example, carbon atoms, are borrowed for a while by one organism and are passed on to others through food webs, or else are returned to the physical environment where they can be used again by other living things.
Global warming. What causes it, and how do we affect it? Can we stop it? All of these questions revolve around a simple element we all interact with on a daily basis: carbon. Carbon is found nearly everywhere on Earth and is the key element in all living things, such as humans, animals and plants. Plants store carbon as they grow and use carbon from the atmosphere during photosynthesis. When plants die, they break down and decompose to become part of the soil. Over time, this matter is compacted and transformed into fossil fuels such as oil and coal. Aquatic plants use the carbon found in seawater for photosynthesis. They store the carbon just like land plants. Then, when animals consume them, they ingest the carbon that is stored within their bodies. Both aquatic plants and animals release carbon back into the water through the process of respiration. Fossil fuels are extracted from the ground and burned to provide energy. This method is our main energy source. It is used to power our cars, produce electricity and power industries. The transfer of carbon into our atmosphere is a direct result of burning these fossil fuels. This result also affects the cycle in a negative manner by way of deforestation. This leaves no remaining trees to help remove carbon from the air, as well as release carbon into the atmosphere. By way of combustion, something we are all familiar with, carbon is again released into our atmosphere where it is stored. Since confirming that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, this additional carbon contributes to our dilemma of global warming.
Billions of years ago, our once lifeless planet was bombarded with a series of meteorites from outer space containing one of the most important building blocks of life: carbon. The carbon began to interact with the existing environment, mixing with water, land, and the atmosphere. Living organisms now inhabited the Earth's surface and its watery depths. These very organisms play a pivotal role in the carbon cycle as we know it today. In the oceans, carbon moves between the atmosphere and the ocean's surface through a process called diffusion. Aquatic plant life absorbs carbon through photosynthesis, fish and other marine life through consumption, which is then returned to the water and air through respiration. When these organisms die, carbon is decomposed and transferred to the ocean floor through a process called sedimentation. Similarly, terrestrial plants remove carbon from the atmosphere through photosynthesis, where they store and use it for growth. as do animals by means of consumption. This carbon is then released back into the atmosphere through respiration, or eventually decomposition, in which over time become fossil fuels. Unfortunately for the carbon cycle, an element has been introduced in recent years, an element that has thrown off the cycle's delicate balance between air, land, and sea. This is the human element. Fossil fuels are extracted and burnt to power cars and produce electricity. The process of deforestation not only prevents plant life from undergoing transfer of carbon with the atmosphere, the fiery blaze also releases carbon into the air in the form of carbon dioxide, all of which leads to an increase in global temperature. So what can we expect next? How does such a natural process respond to this human interference? What is next for the carbon cycle?